I still remember that day. The smell of flowers, the sound of names echoing through the auditorium, and that strange emptiness that sat heavy in my chest. Everyone around me had someone, parents cheering, friends taking pictures, siblings holding bouquets, everyone, except me. When the announcer called my name, Olivia Sanders, Bachelor of Architecture, I stood, smiled, and walked across the stage to collect my degree. I tried to keep my hands steady, but my eyes couldn't stop searching through the crowd. Row after row, not a single familiar face. No one from my family came. Not Mom, not Dad, not even my brother Ethan. I had texted them that morning. "Hey, ceremony starts at 10. You guys will come, right?" No reply. I told myself maybe they were running late. Maybe they got stuck in traffic. Maybe they just forgot to text. But when the speeches ended and the caps were thrown in the air, I finally accepted it. They weren't coming. That moment, with confetti raining down and laughter all around me, I felt completely invisible. After the ceremony, I stood outside with my classmates. Everyone was taking pictures with their families, parents hugging, friends crying, mothers fixing their children's gowns. A girl from my class, Maya, smiled and said, "Where's your family, Olivia?" I forced a laugh. They couldn't make it. Busy day, I guess. She gave me a small, awkward smile. I could see the pity in her eyes, the kind that stings more than words. So I left early. I walked all the way back to my tiny apartment, gown still on, heels clicking on the sidewalk. I passed a bakery, smelled the fresh bread, and remembered how Mom used to bake chocolate chip cookies every Sunday. She used to say, "One day when you graduate, I'll make you your favorite batch." She didn't. That night, I sat alone on my bed, degree still in my hand. It should have felt like the proudest day of my life, but instead, it felt like I'd failed at something much bigger. I thought back to the last time we spoke properly. It was 6 months ago, when I told them I wanted to start my own design studio instead of joining Dad's accounting firm. Dad had slammed his coffee mug on the table. "Olivia, you're being delusional. Architecture, design, that's not a career, that's a hobby." Mom didn't say a word. She just looked at me, then at him. Ethan laughed and muttered, "Good luck drawing houses no one will buy." That was the last dinner I had with them. I kept staring at my degree, tracing my name with my finger, Olivia Sanders, Bachelor of Architecture. It felt heavy, not because of pride, but because of everything it cost. I whispered to myself, "You did it, Olivia," even if no one noticed. And somewhere deep inside I made a silent promise that one day they'd see me again. Not because I begged for attention, but because success would make them look. That was the night I decided. If they thought my dreams were too big, I'd make them impossible to ignore. When people say, "You've always been a dreamer," they usually mean it as a compliment. In my house, it was an insult. Ever since I was little, I've loved buildings. Not the fancy ones, not skyscrapers or palaces, but small, imperfect houses that felt alive. When I was 7, I used to sketch our neighborhood on old cereal boxes. When I was 9, I made my first model house using cardboard, glue, and toothpicks. It leaned to one side, but I thought it was beautiful. Dad didn't. He walked past, glanced at it, and said, "If you spent half that effort on your math homework, you might actually be good at something." I remember holding that little cardboard house like it was fragile glass. I wanted him to see what I saw. Not glue and paper, but a future. But he never did. Mom was softer, but silence can hurt more than words. She'd smile, say, "That's nice, Olivia," and change the subject. Whenever Dad criticized me, she never defended me. Maybe she was afraid of him, or maybe she agreed. I used to sit by my window at night, looking at the skyline of our small town, lights flickering in the distance. I'd whisper to myself. One day, I'll design something that touches the sky. Those nights, I believed I could do anything, until high school happened. At school, I joined the design club. We were a bunch of awkward kids who loved art, glue guns, and staying up late before competitions. My teacher, Mrs. Gray, saw something in me. She once told me, "Olivia, you don't just draw buildings. You give them a heartbeat." That was the first time anyone said something nice about what I loved. So I poured everything into it, skipping parties, staying late after school, entering small design contests online. When I won my first regional competition, Mrs. Gray hugged me like a proud mother. She even wrote a letter of recommendation for architecture school. When I showed it to Dad, he didn't even read it. He said, "Architecture? That's a waste of a scholarship. You should go into accounting like your brother. Something stable." That night we argued for hours. He yelled about money, about practicality, about the real world. I yelled about dreams. And when I finally screamed, "I don't want to be like you," he slapped me. The sound echoed through the living room like thunder. Mom stood frozen, holding a dish towel. Ethan looked down at his phone, pretending not to hear. No one spoke after that. A week later, I received my acceptance letter. Bachelor of Architecture, Greenwood University. It was the happiest moment of my life. Dad didn't congratulate me. He said, "You're on your own. You want to be an artist? Pay for it yourself." And he meant it. He cut me off financially that day. Mom tried to give me a little money secretly, but he found out and stopped her too. I remember packing my bags that night, the smallest suitcase you could imagine, full of secondhand clothes and sketchbooks. Mom stood at the door, tears in her eyes. "Take care of yourself, Liv." That's all she said. No hug, no goodbye from Dad. Ethan didn't even look up. I left quietly. College wasn't easy. I worked part-time at a coffee shop, took tutoring jobs, and survived on instant noodles more often than I'd like to admit. Sometimes, when I couldn't afford rent, I'd sell small hand-drawn architectural prints online. Every design I made carried a little piece of pain and a little piece of hope. Whenever life felt unbearable, I'd remind myself, they think I'm dreaming too big. Good. That means I'm dreaming beyond their reach. There was one night during my second year that I'll never forget. I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, surrounded by sketches and coffee cups, preparing for a design exhibition. Rain was hitting the window softly. I felt exhausted, broke, and alone. Then I got a message from my professor. "Olivia, the city exhibition wants to feature your model. It's exceptional." For a moment, everything felt worth it. Every lonely dinner, every rejection, every insult. But I didn't tell my family. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I could already hear Dad's voice saying, "Oh, so they're displaying your toy houses now?" So I stayed quiet. And that's when I learned something. Silence isn't just what people give you. It's also what you start giving back. By the time graduation came, I'd already stopped expecting them to show up for anything. Still, a small part of me hoped. That's the cruel part about love. Even after being ignored for years, some tiny corner of your heart still waits. But they didn't come. And that's where this story began. Not with a degree in my hand, but with an empty chair where my family should have been. When people imagine chasing your dream, they picture sunshine and passion. No one talks about the hunger, the sleepless nights, the quiet panic that hits when your rent is due and your wallet holds less than a meal. After graduation, I thought job offers would come easily. I had a strong portfolio, good grades, even a few small exhibitions. But reality was crueler than I expected. Every architecture firm I applied to had the same response. "We love your creativity, but we're looking for someone with more experience." Experience. How was I supposed to get experience if no one would give me a chance? Weeks turned into months. Savings ran out. The apartment rent piled up like a tower of unpaid dreams. I took every side job I could find. Waitressing, sketching murals for cafes, even designing posters for a dog grooming salon once. It was humiliating, but I told myself, at least I'm surviving. Sometimes I'd scroll through my friends' social media posts, smiling in shiny offices, posing at company parties. And then I'd look at myself, hands covered in paint, eyes sunken from lack of sleep, eating cereal for dinner. There were nights I'd just lie on my mattress staring at the ceiling, whispering, maybe Dad was right. That sentence broke something inside me every time I said it. One night, I came home after a long shift at the cafe. It was raining, the kind of rain that soaks your soul. My shoes squeaked on the stairs, and when I opened my mailbox, there it was, a red slip from my landlord. Final notice. Eviction in 7 days. I sat on the stairs for almost an hour, soaked and shivering, clutching that letter. All I could think was, I have nowhere to go, no family, no backup, no one waiting for me. I could have called Mom, but what would I say? Hi, Mom, remember me? The daughter who dreamed too big and failed? No. I wasn't ready to hear silence again. For the next few days, I worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. My body ached, my grades slipped, and my confidence disappeared. But even then, even in that chaos, I couldn't stop drawing. Sketching was my therapy. Whenever the world became too loud, I'd pick up a pencil. Sometimes I'd draw buildings, sometimes faces, all of them lonely, all of them reaching for something they could never touch. Then, one day, something unexpected happened. At the cafe, a woman in her 50s walked in, elegant, confident, wearing glasses that looked more expensive than my entire outfit. She ordered a latte and watched me as I was sketching behind the counter during my break. You drew that? She asked. I froze. Yeah, just passing time. She smiled. You have talent, raw talent. I'm an interior designer. Ever thought about freelance work? My heart stopped. That was the first time anyone, outside of college, had recognized my work. I nodded eagerly. She handed me her card. Horizon Designs, Evelyn Clark. That night, I stared at that card like it was a golden ticket. Maybe this was it. Maybe the universe wasn't done with me yet. For the next 2 months, I worked with Evelyn on small design projects, cafes, boutique interiors, and even a mini art gallery. She wasn't just a boss. She was a mentor. She taught me how to price my work, how to present ideas confidently, and how to believe in my own skill. One evening, while reviewing a project, she said, Olivia, stop trying to prove yourself to people who can't see you. Build something so bright that they can't ignore you anymore. Those words hit me harder than any insult ever had. That night, I made a promise to myself. I'm going to build my own design studio. Not just to succeed, but to show them I was never dreaming too big. It wasn't easy. There were rejections, lost clients, unpaid invoices. But every small success added up, one project at a time. I saved every penny, bought a second-hand laptop, learned digital design software through YouTube tutorials. And slowly, things began to change. My designs started gaining attention online. First 10 likes, then 100. Then one of my posts, a 3D house design concept titled Dreamer's Home, went viral on Instagram. The caption read, "For everyone who was told their dreams were too big, build anyway." Within a week, thousands of people shared it. Design blogs featured it. A few even reached out asking for collaborations. But the biggest shock came 2 days later, a notification that said, "Mom liked your post." I stared at my phone for a long time. Her name looked so strange there, like a ghost from another life. A few minutes later, a message popped up. "Dad saw your work. He's proud. He didn't know you were doing this well. My hands trembled. For years I'd dreamed of hearing those words. But now they felt heavy, almost unreal, because now they wanted to see me. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if I wanted them to. I never meant for that post to go viral. It wasn't part of some plan. It was just a late-night thought that came straight from my heart. I'd just finished my biggest project yet, a sustainable housing design for low-income families. It wasn't fancy or luxurious, but it was real, something I knew could change lives. I uploaded the pictures on Instagram, wrote the caption, "For everyone who was told they're dreaming too big, keep building. The world will catch up." I hit post, turned off my phone, and went to sleep. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but then I opened Instagram and froze 20K likes, 8K comments, dozens of DMs from design pages, brands, and architecture firms. People were sharing my story everywhere, calling me the dreamer who built her own sky. Someone even made a small feature about me on a creative magazine's front page. I remember sitting there, staring at my screen, my hands shaking. It felt unreal. After years of silence, suddenly the world was listening. But then I saw it. The comment that made my heart skip. "Mom, proud of you. Live." It was sitting right under the post, a single sentence that hit harder than anything else on that screen. I stared at it for minutes, maybe hours. For years I'd imagined what that moment would feel like, but instead of joy I felt empty, because she hadn't been there when I was sleeping hungry. She hadn't seen me working 2 jobs, crying on the floor with eviction letters. Now she was proud, now that everyone else was. A few days later I got a call. The caller ID said home. My heart dropped. It had been 3 years since I last heard that ringtone. When I picked up, I heard Mom's voice, soft, nervous. "Olivia, honey, we saw your post. Your dad and I just wanted to say, we're sorry." For a moment I couldn't speak. Every word I'd ever wanted to say burned on my tongue. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was silence. "Dad's here too," she added. Then I heard his voice, the same deep tone that once told me my dream was worthless. "You've done good, Liv. I'm proud of you." That was it. No apology for the years of distance. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a sentence. Too late. Too clean. After that call, something inside me broke. Not in a painful way, in a freeing way. For the first time, I realized I didn't need their validation anymore. Their pride didn't define me. Their silence didn't cage me. I had built my world, brick by brick, drawing by drawing, without them. Still, part of me wanted closure. So when they invited me home for dinner, I said yes. Maybe I needed to look them in the eye one last time. The night I drove back to that house, everything felt surreal. The same streets I'd once left in tears now led me back as someone they couldn't ignore. I parked outside, same porch, same flickering lamp. Only this time I was the one who decided when to knock. Mom opened the door, smiling nervously. Dad stood behind her wearing the same serious face, but his eyes were different, softer, older. "Olivia, you look successful," he said awkwardly. I smiled faintly. "I built my own studio," I replied, just like I said I would. Dinner was quiet at first. They asked about my projects, my travels, my success. It all felt strange, like we were playing roles in someone else's story. Then Dad said something that shattered the awkward peace. "I always knew you'd make it." I put down my fork slowly. "No, you didn't," I said. "You told me I was dreaming too big. You cut me off when I needed you most." The room fell silent. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Dad tried to say something, but I stopped him. "You don't get to rewrite the past just because the ending looks good now." For the first time in years, I wasn't crying. I was calm, because I wasn't that girl begging to be seen anymore. I was a woman who had built her own reflection, one that didn't need their approval. When dinner ended, Mom hugged me tightly. She whispered, "I'm sorry, Olivia. I wish we'd believed in you sooner." I didn't say anything. I just held her, because forgiveness isn't a sentence. It's a process. As I left the house that night, I looked up at the sky, the same one I used to dream under as a child. But now I wasn't wishing for anything. I'd already built my wish into reality. It's strange how life works. The same city that once ignored you can suddenly pretend it always believed in you. A few months after that dinner, I received an email from the city's development council. They were hosting an annual event for local innovators, and they wanted to honor me for my architectural contributions. At first, I thought it was a prank. Then I saw the attached list, sponsors, attendees, and even the guest of honor, Mayor Robert H. Gaines. And below that, in smaller text, I saw something that made my chest tighten. Venue, Greenwood Community Hall. The same hall where my high school graduation was held. The same place where my family didn't show up. For days, I couldn't decide whether to go. Part of me wanted to skip it, to avoid reopening old wounds. But another part, the little girl inside me who once whispered one day, "I'll touch the sky," wanted to stand on that stage and prove that she did. So I said yes. The night of the ceremony, I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my hair. I was wearing a simple black dress, elegant but not loud. My studio team had surprised me by showing up at my apartment with flowers and a card that said, "You built us all a dream, Olivia." I smiled, reading it. They were my real family now. When I arrived at Greenwood Hall, flashes from cameras filled the entrance. People I hadn't seen in years greeted me with the kind of smiles that said, "We always knew you'd make it." Funny how success makes memory selective. I shook hands, smiled politely, and thanked them all, even though my heart wasn't there, because I was waiting for one face. Then, through the crowd, I saw them, Mom, Dad, and Ethan. Mom looked nervous, holding a small bouquet of lilies. Dad stood straight, as if still trying to maintain that old pride. Ethan waved awkwardly, probably realizing how long it had been since we'd last spoken. "Olivia." "Sweetheart, you look beautiful," Mom said, voice trembling. I nodded, softly replying, "Thanks." "Mom, I'm glad you came." Dad cleared his throat. "We wanted to. We're proud." There it was again, that word. Proud. A word that had once meant everything and now meant nothing. The ceremony began. I sat in the front row as the mayor spoke about innovation, courage, and resilience. When they called my name, the applause was thunderous. I walked to the stage, my heels clicking like a heartbeat. The lights were bright, almost blinding. As I reached the microphone, I took a deep breath. "When I was young," I began, "someone once told me I was dreaming too big, that I needed to think smaller, be realistic. But here's the thing. Reality changes when you build it yourself." The room fell silent. This award isn't just about architecture. It's about believing in something even when no one else does. To every dreamer sitting in silence, don't shrink your light to fit someone else's shadow. I paused, scanning the audience. My eyes met Dad's for a brief second. He looked down. "Dream big," I continued. "Dream boldly. And when they tell you you can't, smile and show them that you already did." The applause that followed was like thunder. But for me, it wasn't noise. It was closure. After the ceremony, reporters surrounded me for photos and interviews. I smiled through it all, but deep down, I wasn't thinking about the cameras. I was thinking about that little cardboard house I built when I was 7. The one Dad said was useless. If only he knew that every design I ever made began from that same cardboard dream. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood alone in the empty hall. I walked up to the stage once more, holding the glass trophy in my hand. It reflected the lights like a miniature sunrise, and in that quiet moment I whispered, "You did it, Liv." As I turned to leave, I saw Dad waiting near the exit. He walked toward me, slowly. "Olivia," he said softly, "I was wrong. About everything." For the first time in my life, he said it. No excuses, no hesitation. Just truth. "You don't owe me forgiveness," he added, "but I hope one day you'll let us make it right." I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he wasn't the same man anymore. His pride had cracked, and beneath it was regret. I smiled faintly. "I already did, Dad, the moment I stopped needing you to believe in me." He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. We didn't hug, but for the first time I didn't need to. Because sometimes forgiveness doesn't sound like "I forgive you." Sometimes it sounds like peace. That night, as I drove back to my city, the radio played softly. The highway stretched ahead, endless, open, bright. And I realized something simple yet powerful. I wasn't driving away anymore. I was driving forward. After the award night, something inside me changed. It wasn't pride. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. For years, I thought proving my family wrong would fix everything. But when I finally stood on that stage, I realized it was never about them. It was about the girl I used to be, the one who stayed up drawing buildings while everyone slept, the one who got mocked for dreaming too loud, the one who kept believing even when the world told her not to. I didn't want anyone else to feel that kind of loneliness again. That's how Project Rebuild was born. It started small, just a community design program in my old neighborhood. We taught young students basic architectural design, sustainability, and creative thinking. Most of them came from families that said things like, "Art won't pay the bills," or "Dreaming doesn't build houses." I wanted to show them that it actually can. At first, only a handful of kids showed up. They were shy, quiet, unsure, the same way I used to be. But once they picked up a pencil, their eyes lit up. One girl, Mia, reminded me of myself. She brought a crumpled notebook full of sketches. When I asked why she hid them, she whispered, "My dad says it's a waste of time." I smiled and told her, "Then you draw twice as much, because one day that waste of time will build your future." She grinned. And that's when I knew. I was finally where I was meant to be. Within a year, Project Rebuild grew beyond the neighborhood. We partnered with NGOs, schools, and even small construction companies. We designed affordable housing prototypes created by students, built from recycled materials and sustainable technology. One of our models even got featured in a global architecture magazine. They called it Hope, Drawn in Pencil. When I read that title, I cried, because that's exactly what it was. Hope, drawn one line at a time. My family started visiting sometimes. It was awkward at first. Mom helped with organizing workshops. Dad donated some materials through his company. Quietly, humbly. One day he came to see the kids work. He looked at the small, colorful models they'd built and said, "These remind me of that cardboard house you made years ago." I smiled softly. "Yeah, Dad. That's where it all began," he nodded, eyes glistening. Guess I was wrong to call it useless. That was the first time I saw him truly proud. Not just proud of my success, but of my heart. A few months later, we launched the Dreamers Fund, a scholarship program for students who wanted to pursue creative fields but couldn't afford it. On launch day, I gave a short speech. We tell children to aim high, but when they actually do, we call it unrealistic. It's time to change that. Dreaming big isn't arrogance. It's courage. The audience clapped, but I wasn't doing it for applause. I was doing it for every kid sitting at home, sketching on scrap paper, wondering if they're enough. Sometimes I still visit that old hallway in my parents' house, the one where my cardboard models once sat, covered in dust. It's empty now, but when sunlight hits it just right, I can almost see that crooked little house again, and I whisper to it, "We made it." Life isn't perfect now. There are still rejections, deadlines, stress, but the difference is, I no longer chase validation. I build meaning, because at the end of the day, success isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to believe. As I look back on everything, the tears, the hunger, the loneliness, I don't wish it away. Those moments built the foundation beneath my feet. They made me strong enough to stand tall now. If I could go back and talk to that younger version of me, I'd say, keep dreaming, Liv. They'll call you crazy. But one day they'll call you visionary. And she'd probably smile. Because deep down, she always knew it was autumn again, the season when everything ends beautifully. The trees outside my apartment had turned golden, and the air carried that familiar mix of warmth and nostalgia. That's when Mom called. Her voice trembled a little. "Olivia, we're having a small dinner at home this Sunday. Would you come?" I hesitated. It had been years since I'd stepped inside that house as their daughter. I wasn't sure what awaited me. Guilt, silence, or maybe acceptance. But something inside whispered, "It's time." As I drove down that old road, memories flooded back. My first sketchbook, the nights I cried after family dinners, the smell of Dad's cologne mixing with Mom's cooking. When I parked in front of the house, I almost laughed. It looked smaller now, not because it had changed, but because I had grown. Mom opened the door. Her eyes softened instantly, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she pulled me into a hug, a real one, the kind I had waited for all my life. "You look so happy," she whispered. "I am." I smiled. Finally. Inside, Dad was setting the table. Something about that sight, him doing something so ordinary, made my heart ache. He looked up, awkward smile on his face. "You came. You invited," I replied gently. We both laughed, a sound that broke years of silence. At dinner, the atmosphere was strange at first, quiet but not cold. They asked about my projects, my travels, my foundation, and for once I didn't feel like I had to prove myself. I just shared. At one point, Dad said, "We watched that interview of yours on TV. You said something about building homes for dreamers. That was beautiful." Mom nodded, wiping her eyes. "I didn't realize how much courage it took, Olivia, to keep going when no one believed in you." I smiled faintly. "You believed. Just not in the same way. You wanted me safe, but I wanted to fly. Mom took my hand, and you did." After dinner, I wandered into my old room. The walls were painted over, the posters gone. But in the corner, there was a small box. Inside it were a few of my old sketches. And tucked beneath them, the tiny cardboard model I had built when I was 12, a little bent, dusty, but still standing. I ran my fingers over it and whispered, "You survived too." Dad appeared at the door. He looked at the model and said quietly, "I kept it. Didn't know why, but maybe part of me always knew you'd make something out of it." I turned toward him. For the first time in my life, I saw not disappointment, but pride. Not the kind that comes from success, but the kind that comes from understanding. He walked over, rested a hand on my shoulder, and said, "I'm proud of you, Olivia. Not because you proved us wrong, but because you stayed true when we weren't." I couldn't stop the tears. I hugged him, and in that moment, the weight of a decade simply melted away. When I left later that night, the air felt lighter. As I stood by the car, Mom handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph, Me, at 10 years old, holding that same cardboard house. On the back, she had written, "You were right to dream big." I smiled, tears blurring the words. "Thank you," I whispered. Driving home, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. Because forgiveness isn't about forgetting what they did. It's about remembering who you became despite it. And as I looked at the road ahead, I knew I had finally arrived. Not at success, but at peace. It's strange how life comes full circle. Once I thought success was about standing on a stage, holding a trophy, proving every doubter wrong. But now I know, it's not about being seen. It's about seeing yourself clearly for the first time. I spent so many years chasing approval that I forgot what joy felt like. Now I find it in the quiet moments, the sound of rain tapping on my window, the laughter of students sketching their first ideas, the feeling of peace when I wake up and don't have to pretend anymore. Sometimes people ask me, "Olivia, what does it feel like to be successful?" And I tell them the truth. Success isn't when everyone finally believes in you. It's when you no longer need them to. Because validation fades, applause stops. But self-respect, that stays. I often visit the community center we built. The walls are covered in children's drawings, some crooked, some wild, all beautiful. They remind me of where I began. One afternoon, a little boy came running up to me, holding a messy sketch of a flying house. He said, "Miss Olivia, when I grow up, I want to build houses in the sky." I laughed, my heart full. "Then promise me one thing. Never stop believing that you can." He grinned and nodded, running back to his friends. And in that moment, I realized, that's it. That's the legacy I wanted, not fame, not money, just the power to plant belief where the world sowed doubt. I think about my younger self often. The girl who sat alone at dinner tables, who was called foolish, who cried herself to sleep dreaming of blueprints and skylines. I want to tell her that she made it, not just in the world's eyes, but in her own. I want to tell her that one day, the pain that felt unbearable would turn into art, the rejections would become direction, and the silence would become strength. People like to measure success in numbers, followers, awards, paychecks. But I measure mine in something else. Peace. Peace in knowing I didn't give up when it was easiest to. Peace in forgiving those who couldn't understand me. Peace in realizing that every no I heard was just life's way of saying, not yet. Now, when I scroll through social media, I see my family leaving comments on my posts. Simple ones like, "So proud of you," or "Beautiful work." It used to make me tear up. Now it just makes me smile, because I no longer post for them. I post for that one dreamer somewhere, who needs to see that it's possible. I've learned that success isn't about being invited back to the table that once rejected you. It's about building your own table, and leaving an open seat for those who come after you. If there's one thing I've learned through it all, it's this. Dreaming big will cost you. You'll lose people. You'll lose comfort. You'll lose the version of yourself that needed permission to shine. But what you gain is everything. You gain truth. You gain strength. You gain you. As I stand on the balcony tonight, watching the city lights flicker like stars, I whisper to the wind, not out of sadness, but gratitude. Thank you, pain. Thank you, doubt. Thank you for shaping me. Because without them, there would be no story. And without the struggle, there would be no strength. So to every person listening, every Olivia out there, every dreamer who feels unseen, remember this. You are not too much. You are not asking for too much. You are just surrounded by people who settled for too little. Keep dreaming. Keep building. Keep believing. Even when it's lonely. Because one day, the world will call you brave for doing what they were too afraid to try. My family ignored my dreams once, but in the end, it was those same dreams that taught me what love, success, and freedom truly mean.